I can do truffles. I can say that I can do truffles. I can say that I know how to make dark chocolate bars and milk chocolate bars. I mean, how sexy is that, right?
Do you ever wish you could quit your job and pursue your dreams? Maybe that lingering business idea that's been in the back of your head? This isn't another series about million-dollar ideas. Bizpirations features stories of everyday people, people just like you, people just like me, but the difference is they chose to take a chance. 99% of people will stay exactly where they are. These are the 1%, the other 1% that chose to be different. Let's dive in. Hey Brian, thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much for having me too.
Would you please describe to us where we are?
Well, currently we are in Costa Rica. This is the Central Pacific. If you're looking at the Costa Rican map, we're lucky enough to have two coasts. So the Caribbean side of Costa Rica and the Pacific. So we are right in the middle of the Pacific side at a place known as Quepos or Manuel Antonio, which is right at the beach. So we're basically here, summertime for us, sea level with very high temperatures. So that's where we're at.
And tell us like now, like where are we? Where are we sitting?
More specifically, we're sitting right now in my house. So this is my home. I've been working on this project for a couple of years. This is also surrounded by my property with the projects that I have been working with, which is basically a couple of tours, activities. There is a chocolate tour here. There is a jungle night tour, natural trails, a chocolate factory, and also my house in one of those locations within the property.
Awesome. And before we dive into your journey of the project and developing your house, the property, the chocolate, what does the audience need to know about you before we dive into all of that?
Well, it's a pretty good question. I would say a relevant aspect related to who I am, because, you know, we all have our own identity. It goes back to many years, and I see myself, you know, growing up in a very numerous family in the countryside of Costa Rica, and all my siblings playing soccer. And me, on the other hand, rather a little bit, interested in other things like growing orchids. So this is basically, I guess, if I had to describe who Brian is at that specific moment of his life. So I'm this boy in the countryside growing orchids, you know, and making my mother happy because she was always super excited about it. Yeah.
And in Latin America, obviously, football, soccer is, everything when you're a kid. So for you to be kind of going off to the other side and doing that, what was that like?
Well, I guess you have to have priorities, not only in terms of what you're going to do to look cool and, you know, match with the rest of the kids community, because as you said, you're growing up in a country, Central America, Latin America, so like you play with the ball outside, you know, especially in the countryside. This is something that you're doing. So for me, my priority, of course, having fun with my friends and playing and everything. But for me, one of my priorities was actually to take care of my plants. Like they gave me so much joy, and you know, just being out there bonding with nature all the time. But for me, this was probably one of the key aspects as I was growing up.
And is that something that you've since carried on with the plants? That they always been in your life, something you've always taken care of and grown with?
Well, I do understand, I do believe, thinking, you know, back, that since that happened, as I was, you know, growing up and doing this, I don't think I've ever like take a step back from nature, you know. I found ways to make it profitable. I found ways to make it my hobby. I found ways to make it pretty relaxing. You know, like there's nothing more relaxing than walking through a jungle, for example, or diving deep into the ocean, you know, or jumping off a plane. Like if you see, there are so many little things where the main element or character, you know, is nature. And I guess I'm right there, stuck in the middle.
Touching on your hobbies, so obviously we have the plants. What other hobbies do you like to do?
So my hobbies, there is, I think it's like answering the question, what is the source of happiness, right? I guess the more sources you have, not only one like your partner or your job or your sports, whatever you do, I think I would like to answer that as, or look at it as what is the source of happiness for me. And definitely the hobbies play an important role. I would say off-roading. I like to drive, dirt bikes or, off-roading with cars. I personally have a very committed group of people that I go out with in the rainy season mostly, find special trails and do this. That would be kind of like the adrenaline side. I like to dive, for example. I like to go fishing. I like bird watching. Frog watching is one of the things that I am very passionate about it. I like macro photography. And as you can see, there's always a natural element to this. And probably one of the most recent, I would say the last 10 years, I have been doing multiple trips around the world. Actually, last time we had a conversation when you called me to talk about this project, I was in Brazil, right? At a hotel room. I was just getting ready to start exploring that part of the world, which was my first time to South America.
Has travel always been something important for you?
Well, one thing that I would say is probably one of the most transforming moments or events in my life to get me where I am today was actually traveling. I traveled initially to attend to an exchange basically that I had to do. I was in Germany back in 2007. And more or less because of something that I was or I needed to do. So I went to Germany and that basically woke me up. Like then my senses developed and I was like, oh my God, this is Germany and they speak this language and this is how people behave, And that basically got me engaged and I was ever since traveling, Southeast Asia, I don't know, Germany, Europe multiple times, the United States, South America recently. So basically, I guess it's difficult to get out of it. There's no way back.
And what? Let's go back to your first job you've had as a kid. What was the first job you ever had growing up?
My first job growing up. Well, considering that, I would say my first job where I was paid for. This was also working at a butterfly garden. I study natural sciences, so this is basically my first, if you look at a diagram of all the things that I have done, so working as a tour guide, as a, nature interpreter, and also I was in charge of a butterfly garden, basically doing tours at a butterfly gardens, talking about butterflies all day long, and I'm proud to say that I'm a butterfly expert, at least butterflies from the Central Pacific of Costa Rica, because we have like 17,000 species of butterflies countrywide. So that means for you to really go ahead and say, hey, I am an expert in this matter, so it's a big number. But yeah, I would say nature, tour guiding at a butterfly garden. That was my first my first work where I was remunerated, actually. Yeah.
And what other jobs have you had that led you up to the point where we're going to get to where you struck it off on your own?
Well, I would say jobs as far as changing and doing, different things. I had an office job in Europe. I worked in Europe a couple of years. I worked there for a company that develops photovoltaic power plants. So I was basically working with a team of people from Germany and developing projects in Spain and the Middle East. So this was a job office. I was working in supply chain management, project development, and so on. Let's say a lot of hours of office work, which definitely helped me to get there and to better understand, how people actually reliably work in other parts of the world other than Costa Rica. Soon after I returned to Costa Rica, I also started working, or I kept on working with tourism again and doing tours. And as I said, nature has always been there, not only making me feel good, but also helping me, make money, making it profitable for me to develop and keep growing,
And who in your life has been an inspiration and inspired you, and have they had any effect on your business now or in the past?
Well, that's a very big question. It's easy to let people out. I think everybody plays an important role. As far as one of the things about traveling that I was commenting previously, one of the things about traveling is that you go ahead and you see that every single individual has specific features that make them the way they are. So by looking at the whole spectrum, when you meet people, you will see that this person has a specific value or will give you specific details in terms of how to make business, how to make money, how to understand. I have people, that, for example, had a very good intuition, and they gave me tips and ideas on how to select the right people for your business. And I think this is one of the key scenarios. If you know how to select the right people when you are, funding, when you are developing a project, so this is going to take you like so far away. So yeah, I have people that help me selecting, teach me how to select the right people. When I was 18 years old, I worked for this local butterfly garden, the owner of this place at that time. So he was definitely a very important person in my life who was very encouraging, not only to study, right, and keep growing in that line, but also to, try new things, learn new languages, travel to other countries. Well, one important segment, of course, mom and dad, who basically, having supportive parents is very important so that you don't grow up with trauma, you don't grow up with, lack of affection, for example. Dad and mom basically gave us, because I grew up in a numerous family. We're 6 kids in one household, plus mom and dad, so that is a rather large family. So it's very hard for your parents to actually give you whatever and all you need, right? But I guess having principles like honesty, like hardworking, committed humans, so this was already a very important milestone for me and the rest of my life. 10 years later, I find myself working at a butterfly garden. This is where I basically had my first job. There's this gentleman, Jim Damalas. So he definitely put a very important seed in terms of how I should look at the world, how I should approach education, because he's very committed to education and also very committed to have, perfect harmony between developing business, making business very profitable in harmony with nature. So this is one of the persons that I definitely looked at, not only from afar, but also very close because we were friends. So we will talk about it. It is interesting because my first tour, when I was 18, I gave him that tour. I remember he gave me $10 as a tip. Hey, I'm 18 years old and I get like $10, that's a long time ago. I was super excited. Within that same project, one of the individuals who actually encouraged me to become a tour guide and, talk to people and get out there, it's another friend who unfortunately passed from cancer a couple of years ago. His name is Roy Orozco. Actually, yesterday, 10 years ago, he left us. But yeah, these 2 individuals were very important. 10 years later, living in Germany and working, another individual who comes to definitely revolutionize my way of thinking, the accuracy of making business. His name is Stefan Kammler, who is a German businessman that we used to develop photovoltaic power plants in the Middle East and also in Spain and around different places in Europe. And this person basically gave me more of an agile mind to make business without fearing that things might not work out, and this accuracy in terms of how to work with people and how to invest in a smart way. So yeah, I would say this couple of individuals definitely gave me a very important foundation.
So, Brian, why don't you, tell us the name of your company and describe for us what you do?
So, the company that I currently, let's say my big baby that I'm working with currently is Terra Travel Costa Rica. yet. I have like extensions out of this company, which of course for, search engine optimization purposes or marketing purposes, or, having a more transparent way of, presenting the products. I have other extensions like Chocolatier Manuel Antonio, which has its own identity, not only on the web, but also physically speaking, like these projects happen in different places. There is the Jungle Night Tour, which is basically in a different place. It has a different structure. Different people work or cooperate with me operating these tours. And then, of course, on top, we have Terra Travel Costa Rica, which is basically like the big umbrella that has all the platforms, and whoever works here is working for the bigger company. But let's say as far as the products and as far as the quality and everything is like, in different channels. And this is what I'm doing.
And can you describe the different tours that you offer?
Well, under Terra Travel, we have very innovative or, new projects that I personally developed. This is also something that I have been looking around, like what kind of activities, what kind of opportunities are still available as far as a market gap, goes. And one thing that I have been, or I started with was the Jungle Night Tour. Like if you ask, like, in the last 10 years, the Jungle Night Tour, so this is something that a lot of people think about it, and they think about Brian, not necessarily at that moment. It's like the other project is the Chocolatier. Like a lot of people think of chocolate and they think, it's like, wow, we're in Manuel Antonio in a place, we have here 20,000 people. And if people think or talk about chocolate, they always think about Brian, 10 years ago with the night tour was the same. So now it's a little bit more diluted because there are also other companies, and I cannot be like a solo man show. Like I have other people that I work with. But the night tour is definitely a super cool activity. If you have never done it, you should go out at jungle in a tropical country. In the jungle at night is probably one of the most amazing activities. And you can do that. It's a lot of fun. You make money out of this. Who doesn't like to do something that gives you pleasure, gives you emotions? I have been crying on top of an animal that I have never seen before, like looking at a sea turtle, for example, laying eggs, or looking at an animal doing a specific activities that you have never seen before. People ask me all the time, like, Brian, have you ever seen, or what is the coolest thing? What is the craziest thing you have seen? And I'm always thinking, like, actually, I have seen, for example, a sloth so many times, but every time you see them, they're doing something different, I saw recently a sloth giving birth. They do it upside down, hanging from the trees. That is the coolest thing ever, like you almost want to cry because it's so like emotional. Then this is pretty much also the motivation behind creating a night tour. Like 12 years ago, when we didn't have maybe more than another activity like that in the area. And that was basically the motivation that took me to start, doing that activity. And that was the financial buster as well for me to grow from there.
It's funny you were talking about how people associate the Jungle Night Tour with you. And I think for the longest time before I've really gotten to know you, that it was always, oh yeah, Jungle Night Tour Brian.
Yeah.
It's that, oh, of course, yeah, Jungle Night Tour Brian.
I have seen people, they have me saved in their phones as Night Tour Brian.
Yeah.
Or Chocolate Brian. I've seen it like actively, like, or like if I meet somebody, they will like, they don't even know my last name, they just like, they know my first name, and then they put whatever else, have them connected with me. Yeah, and then the Chocolatier, this is a completely different activity. It's more of a cultural thing that is super integral. That came years later when I realized that it was time to not only, start growing the numbers, but also, innovating so that the company looks better. So basically having the reputation of my team, my people, my place, my vehicles, my knowledge, the support, the access, availability, which of course is very important. innovating and coming up with a new project. It was not about telling people, hey, look, I'm Brian and this is what I do. It was more like, hey, look, this is what I have to offer. So they didn't have to worry about, oh, let's see who this guy is and how he's doing things. Is he doing a good job? Is he doing a more or less job? So, and I basically started working, on the search of a property. It took me like 11 years to find it. And then that's where I developed the Chocolatier, which is kicking ass today. Yeah.
All right. So, Brian, you said it took you 11 years to find this property where we are now. Tell me about that process.
I would say one of the main milestones for me at a given time, especially for that specific project, because the concept I had was a very, it integrated. I wanted to integrate different things, not only bring people and show them cacao trees and teach them how chocolate is made. I also wanted to have people learning about all the processes more accurately, but also learning about coffee and also learning about sugarcane and vanilla and black pepper and medicinal plants. So that means for you to plant all of this, you're dealing with space aspects. Now, what kind of people do I want to attract? So then I had to look at, like, where is my clientele? What are my potential clients located? And then you go to the point, location, right? Like this concept is probably always going to be there. So then, I looked for about 11 years. I had a concept in my brain pretty clear. So I'm looking for a property. Every time I saw a space, I would try to develop that idea and make it tangible, visualize it in my head on that property. And this area here was ideal. It was close to town because, it's not always about money. It's not always about location in terms of price, because, of course, we live here by the beach. This is a very exclusive area. We have some of the most exclusive resorts in Costa Rica. They are here 5 minutes from my house, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes from my house. So that means you have to consider that the property is rather expensive and very expensive, like California prices, especially with the views and everything, right? Then also there is the local government issue or aspect. Properties here, for example, surrounded or the vicinities of Quepos and Manuel Antonio in the last couple of years, which I think is very good for the communities. They have what is known as a development plan. So basically, the government, the municipality gives you a guide, like guidelines, and tells you basically what can you do in that specific place. It's like, for example, if you want to make a brewery in Quepos, you cannot do it because that is something industrial, that is like a factory, so that's not allowed. If you want to have a bar and there is a school nearby, for example, how close, like you cannot do that, right? If you want to grow cacao and you want to have tours and you want to have, a house, but then you want to have commercial access to that property, then you have to look at that development plan, see your location, and then think about, okay, what do I want to do? This and this and this. Okay, yes, I can do it or not. So that means it's not always about money. It's also about what can I develop in that specific property, in that location, all right?
And so when you found this property, it probably had everything you needed on it, right, already? All the cacao and the pepper and the plants and everything, or describe us
the property.
What this
the only thing that the
like.
property had, to be honest, was potential. So I saw it, like I said, I basically developed that thing. I put a layout over there. I walked around the property. Actually, I have something that I have done a lot is I have designed trails, like hiking trails, because of my night tours. So I have done multiple hiking trails, so I recognize the terrain pretty well. So landscaping, I really like that as well. But I had a property that was empty. There were some bigger sized trees, of course. Those don't grow in a couple of years, but everything else is empty. Notice that Manuel Antonio National Park is approximately a kilometer here behind me, right? So Quepos, the city, it's about a kilometer in that direction. So that means where we're at, this is a buffer zone. Buffer zones are key areas to protect basically the core of a protected area like the national park. Yet, in these places, back to the development plan, you can do this and this and this. So yet this area used to be used for farming. So that means there were big, vast open spaces. So I got the property. Number one, started planting trees. It started making it look really nice. I started building my house soon after that. And then little by little developing trails and the whole infrastructure to start doing my chocolate tours.
And tell me about the moment you decided to go off on your own. So I guess tell me about where you were. Let's talk about where you were working, who you were working for, and what was the moment, the deciding factor that you were like, gotta go off.
Yeah, very good question. I think there is a set of multiple things that actually meet, because I was working as a tour guide, running the Jungle Night Tour. And also I had the previous experience from working and developing businesses in Europe, in Germany. There was already a more reliable cash flow because, you need the idea, you need the location, you need the property, you need the time, the motivation, you need the courage to do it. And of course, you need cash. You need money to do this, right? I've never brought investors within my space. I have had the opportunity, but because of a series of personal decisions, I never brought an investor. So I wanted to do it, and still working on other projects that probably I will mention afterwards. But always trying to stay away, from other investors, to keep the control a little bit more, so that I can go my own pace and I can decide what to do, when and why and all that stuff. But yeah, I had come from Germany. I had been working over there. I had, the idea of something I wanted to do. I was working for a travel company here locally. And then I was actually commenting to a couple of friends, and I went up to a couple of friends. I exposed the idea because at that moment I was not quite sure, okay, am I going to do it alone or am I going to do this, with somebody else? The people that I talked to, they didn't want to do it because they didn't understand the idea or they didn't visualize the idea. So, and that's when I said, okay, cool. I will start doing these activities parallel to the job that I already have. Because it's not only, you cannot start your own business and just let go of what is giving you money, right? Because you have responsibilities. But yeah, that's like 12 years ago now. And I started, making my own tours, my own, hikes, and basically rapidly, the response, because we were doing a great job and are still doing a great job. The response, from the local market was amazing. And then like 3 months later, I was already working for myself. And that's 12, 13 years ago. And I've been independent ever since, just tweaking things around and trying to make it.
What's the timeline from when you started working for yourself until the day you bought the property where we are now?
Well, there is I was working for this company and doing my night tours. The first thing, because doing the night tours, you required a lot of property. So what I did at the beginning, I basically went to some people here locally. I talked to them. I said, okay, listen, I have an idea. I want to make a trail on your property and I will give you, X amount of money. They liked it. So then by doing so, I didn't have to, take out a chunk of money and buy a property, which I didn't have the money at that moment anyways, to invest because you need a serious space. And a couple of years later, when I, had been working with the night tours and creating more ideas, that's when I went ahead and I bought this property because I didn't want to develop a project of this quality and these characteristics in someone else's property. So I thought, okay, cool. Now I can go ahead and afford, a property for myself. And that was approximately 5 years later, I would say. That's when I got the property here. And again, I was looking already for a house or for a place to make a house for so long anyways until I found this, which was ideal.
And let's talk about the day you signed for this property. What emotions did you have the day you handed over the money, you signed on the dotted line, and you finally took your first step here and looked around like, this is mine. What was that like?
But one thing that that has been a characteristic for me, I have been lucky enough to be introduced years ago to a lot of good writers and motivational speakers and people, I don't know, people like Jim Rohn, people like Napoleon Hill, So basically, having already and growing up with that, being hungry for like developing and doing things, So you tend, after you put all these people that you learn from and work for, you tend to develop ideas in your brain and you visualize it and you have them so clear that they will happen, So then when I signed the property here, one of the things I did, I remember coming out of this in Costa Rica, to buy a property, you have to go to a lawyer and all the parties have to sit down and you sign the paper, the contract, and then it's your property. The other person takes the money. So I remember coming out of this office and I felt like I was floating, like I felt light because it was a very long process. And I remember it was more like a physical feeling. I felt like relieved as well because, things could have gone wrong. You never know, right? But I just felt like peace of mind. And then I thought to myself, finally, it took me a while because I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know when. But signing for a property, and then after that, I have acquired different properties in different places, but the feeling will not compare to that specific signed. I'm pretty sure about that.
So, all right, so you have the property. Let's talk about what steps you had to take until you finally had your first tour here on your own property.
So, well, number one, getting the property. Number two, having a concept like, okay, I want to show people what I want to show people. I want to show people cacao trees because I want to teach people. I want to teach the community. Actually, we're very committed to work here with local schools and, integrate the local community so that people can take also, plus all the people who work here and all the social impact we're creating. Yeah, we needed to have the trees. So I just went ahead and made a huge botanical garden and, having faith that they will grow because you grow trees like cacao trees, they need at least 2.5, 3 years to actually grow and start producing. Like I knew, I just got this property, I just planted this. And apart from all the bureaucracy and the paperwork that had to come from the local government, hiring people, insurances, policies, blah, 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 vehicles to transport the people, which I already had at that time as well. But it was more like, okay, I need to have the platform so that people have something to see, because I'm not going to tell you about vanilla if I don't have the vanilla plant. I'm not going to tell you about, tuna if we're not in the ocean looking at the tuna, right? Yeah, I would say that was the workflow I had to do. I had it very clear. I had it visualized, but basically making the garden. After that, I had to make the trails within the property. After that, I had to create a space for the exhibit, like a small amphitheater kind of, which is where we basically take the people. It's like the classroom, if you want to look at it like that, to basically teach people and talk to people and have instruments and have all the sampling materials and have the infrastructure where you will take the people and basically introduce them to the topic that you actually wanted to represent. And it took approximately 4.5 years. It was a very long process. By the time I finished everything else, the infrastructure, the exhibit area, and the trails, we already had the trees growing and producing. Considering that in that specific time, we're talking about a moment when the Niña, el fenómeno, the weather conditions were extremely rough. I remember we were like irrigating the gardens and making sure that the plants wouldn't burn because it was extremely hot. So that means besides, financial, besides time issues we had because I couldn't accelerate the growing process of the plants and everything else, we also had the weather issue. That was a pretty dry year. We had a very bad drought, and then that slowed things down a little bit for us. But yeah, these are some of the steps that I had to go through.
So even before you took anyone here, You bought this property, you were putting all this money in developing it, but you couldn't even take anyone here yet. So you were still doing your night tours. Anything else, or just kind
Well,
of
I
waiting
did it. I
for-
started building my house in the corner. So like this, where this house is, this is basically my property has a space in that direction and in that direction, in that direction. So this is the corner. Like basically in the back of my house, there is a different property and then the national park. But this is old jungle. This is the last house. Yeah, I started building my house, and once I moved into the house, I was capable of, running and putting everything else beautiful, making everything else beautiful so that people would have a nice platform to go and see. But yeah, no, exactly. There was nothing profitable happening on the property within at least 4 years after I got it. It was just hard work all the time. Plus all the years that I spent planning. After that, of course, I'm like, okay, cool. Next year, we're going to be ready to go. Now we have to do the most important thing, which is the human capital. Like, okay, I now need to go and find the people to help me develop this, right? Because I had the ideas, but I didn't necessarily have the knowledge on how to develop and implement the ideas. And this is where I went ahead and I basically found the people and I talked to these people. Look, this is what I'm doing. This is the idea that I have. This is what I want to do. This is how I want it to look like. Now teach me how to make it happen, And of course, if somebody has the knowledge, they go like, of course, cool, we can do it. And then I had different or multiple disciplines coming here and just developing everything little by little, putting all the parts of the puzzle together until we had something that we could show people and charge money for. All right. And super excited when we did the first tour. It was in May 2018. Super amazing day.
Tell me about that.
Well, I had 7 people. I remember clearly. We had 7 people on the tour, and they came from a local hotel to the property. And I was in the house, actually in the property, like looking at the tour guide, because I didn't do the first tour. It was a person I had brought to cooperate with us. But I was like, these were like the most stressful 2 hours of my whole time of the project. Basically, I was like looking at the lady. It's a lady, Erica. I was looking at Erica, and she was doing the tour, and she was going from this station to the other station. Then they went sampling on the gardens. Then they went to make, coffee. And they went to make cocktails out of sugarcane juice. And then she was like developing, she was like doing an amazing job. And then when she finished, I walked up to her and we were like, congratulations, this is amazing. And that was another moment where I thought to myself, wow, this is called, production. This is, tangible, like this is happening, right? Amazing.
What's been your biggest failure? And how did you overcome that?
I think as far as failure, I have had since early years and different opportunities. I have had to learn about, how to do things. I have had always this commitment approach to life. Like if I want to do something, I just want to go ahead and find the right steps. And if I don't find the right instruments or tools to make it work, I just don't stop searching for the tools, or I create the tools. But as far as failure, I would say there were so many small obstacles, small like milestones that needed to be accomplished. And I wasn't talking about a theme park that you can build in 6 months or something, because I'm working with nature. I'm growing cacao. You make chocolate out of cacao. It's like we're going to be teaching little kids from around the world where chocolate is coming from. Like it needed to be really nice. So then I would say one of the main obstacles we had was timing, the timing. As far as paperwork from the local government, which can be an issue, especially if you're opening a different type of business like the one that I'm approaching soon. I will be working with the municipality where I needed a quicker response. With the Chocolatier project farm, I already had, years. I had to wait like 3 years, 3.5, 4 years to actually start working and developing the thing. basically. Anything else there in between, I had enough time to do it. Paperwork, just go ahead and do it. I would say that was one challenging thing, the time, because you cannot run with this. The other one was to collect or find the right people. For me, I would say the hardest part, as far as the other projects, as far as what is coming up as well in my life soon with this project, it has always been how to select and where to find, because you can select the right people easily if you have it in front of you. But if you don't have them in front of you, it's like, okay, where do I have to go? I travel all of Costa Rica, and I did sometimes similar activities where I will talk to people on the street, or I saw somebody like doing something, and I would approach these people and just propose an idea, like, can you do this? Would you like to do this? Or tour guides. I would say one of the most important things I have here, currently I work here with a few, Gregory, for example, Juan. So these are some of the individuals that I work with. My sister works here, Grace. So, these people are playing an important role in this development, not only in the development, because one thing is, okay, once I have it ready, once I have it running, amazing, this is going to happen, it's happening, but how about sustainability? Like, how am I going to do, what are the steps that I have to approach to make sure that this is going to be sustainable in the long run, right? Because that's the whole trick about it. You just don't want to make something that is going to last 6 months or a year or 2 years. So you want to be there working decades. You want to provide opportunities for other people. You want to create jobs for other people. So, but as far as obstacles or failures down the road, I think because of the way I approach all these little things that happened, I wasn't afraid of losing. I wasn't afraid of waiting. I wasn't afraid of, being there exposed. I was just ready to go. And I think my passion for that, because I knew I wanted to do it, gave me that strength and that, accuracy I was needing to grow and make it happen. Yeah.
And, from when you first started in this industry until now, what's changed on an industry level?
So the industry, probably I would say one of the main things to deal with would be smaller businesses or larger businesses that are, implementing similar concepts in the area. As far as today, I don't feel that, let's say as far as regulations, because we have regulations, I don't feel that this has been affecting us too much. I mean, we have been coming out of a pandemic, which we successfully survived, keeping all the people and everything. But I would say the competition and the access to other activities that probably offer lower quality experiences, but of course for lower prices. So then, in fact, I implemented a couple of things and I increased the price. Recently we had competitors coming in, and instead of decreasing the prices, I went ahead and restructured my price and I went higher, and the response was amazing, It's a little tricky. You have to know where and what are the elements that you're going to be putting out there to make sure people are understanding why you go up with the prices when everybody else is going down. And the response has been very positive. One little change that we have done, I say we because I have an amazing team here of people cooperating, was actually the implementation of a chocolate factory. So something that I had down the line a couple of years ago, but I finally, and this happened just last week, actually 2 weeks ago, we successfully finished the seminar with a chocolatier from a different country who came here to basically teach us, including myself. Like, I can do truffles. I can say that I can do truffles. I can say that I know how to make dark chocolate bars and milk chocolate bars. I mean, how sexy is that, right? So, yeah, and now we are basically starting with our own chocolate production. I register a brand, is internationally registered, We have a logo, we have a name, it's called Kashuk. And this is one of those add-ons, one of those extensions that the others are not doing. And this is precisely what makes the business, interesting. People are like, okay, cool, look, these people have been changing, they have been adapting, they have been, making new little things. And the whole thing, the whole experience in the end is a lot more rich for the visitors.
Do you think any of your experiences abroad have anything to do with the way you conduct business?
That's a good question. I would definitely say yes, because of the exposure to how people think. I think this is maybe the best way to not only understand how business works, but also to understand how you work. And doing business in Costa Rica, for example, I mean, I'm a Latino. We are from Costa Rica. We're laid back. Like, we do things rather chill, and there's this thing known as tico time. Costa Ricans, we're known as ticos, and there is something known as tico time, which I do not necessarily agree with, because tico time means like, okay, if you say, Brian, come to my house, 2 p.m., so that could be 2:30, So traveling, especially working in places like Switzerland or Germany, so like time, something such a little thing, but time is extremely important. And I would definitely say yes, learning this, the specific working schedules, these deadlines, limits, when is this supposed to be done? Send me the email that you're supposed to send me. Do it here. Can you please reach out to me? So this is definitely something that we're not always doing it in this way. And traveling and working in other physical spaces definitely gave me, that value for the business development.
Okay. So, Brian, what's the worst piece of advice that someone's ever given you?
That's a good one. I think for me, of course, there's always people telling you not to do it because it doesn't make sense, because they don't see it, right? But I would say the worst or the thing that I have seen that happens a lot is I hear people commenting about ideas they have. I hear people talking about projects they have, basically verbally exposing ideas. But then if you double check on these people, a couple of weeks, a couple of months later, they are still there. So I guess more than receiving bad advice, I think I have just kept my eyes open and observing how people behave in terms of how they approach their ideas, and I have been trying to avoid it. It's like learning basically from something that is not being done from other people for your own sake, for the sake of your business and yourself.
And with everything you know now, what would you tell Brian, who just got back from Germany and got in the airport in Costa Rica? You run into yourself. What do you say?
Oof. I guess if I saw little Brian, not the one who grows the orchids, but the one who was coming back from Germany, as you said, I will tell him to just don't stop, just keep getting the information. I think searching not only to how to live, I think everybody knows how important it is to exercise, but trying to collect more information and, from a more, extensive spectrum is very important. And this is what I will say, make, a list of the things that you do and try to balance all of them. Work out, sleep well, be nice, talk to people, keep your eyes open will be the best advice for me. And always, observe whatever is happening around you. Keep your eyes open in terms of businesses happening, opportunities. Listen well, even better. All right, because when you're younger, you tend to be a little bit loose. Or if people give you advice, sometimes people don't really take it as important because, there's this concept of, okay, no, I want to do it because I want to have the experience, But hey, how about taking a different approach? How about not doing it because somebody told me that this is going to happen like that? And if you see that it's tangible and it's real and it's not like people are trying to stop you from doing something, and I think that also applies to going around and just listening very well and looking very well, observing around very well, to better understand and just get all that information, on time, and get smarter.
And for someone who's just starting a business, or maybe they watch this video and they want to start their own, what advice would you give them?
I would say write it down, and double check on the idea. Just go ahead and write it down, and don't think about financial limitations. Don't think about the steps, just think about a concept that you want to develop and write it down the way you want. If it's 3 stories, if it's 4 stories on the ground or above the ground, just do it that way. So if it is a project that is in a different country, or you need to have the longest cable in Central America to get from A, just write it down, make it look the way you want it to look, and then you will automatically, your brain, your people, your money, automatically you will start looking for the right path and the right steps to actually make it happen and make it look the way you want it. But I think an idea is not completed if you don't develop the idea the way you want, I would say. So that's why I think the idea comes first and then it flourishes. The idea comes first, you make the concept, you know what it looks like you see it, you look at it, you write it down carefully, you take the details, you go back to your description. And I go through my to-do lists from 10 years ago, and I go, to my to-do list from 5 years ago, and things have checked here, boom, boom, boom. Of course, you always come up with more. But I think it's more like a lifestyle. I go ahead and just write it down the way you want, and then after that, once you have the idea, find the right steps, little by little, to make it work. Yeah.
And it sounds like you're someone who always had something going on. So do you have a new project that you have on the horizon here?
Well, one project I had, of course, was the chocolate factory. I had this for almost 2.5 years. So we finally finalized that 2 weeks ago. So we finished that, successfully, super exciting. That was a very important milestone for us, for me. And then there is another project that it's like the new baby, and there is still in that gestation process. And I can tell you only so much. My company acquired a property in the city last year where we are developing a 3-story building where the first 2 stories are going to be a hostel and a hotel. We have a cafeteria. We have, some offices. One of them is one of the offices of my own businesses. And there is a concept that I am implementing that is completely new for the area that I don't want to talk about that part right now. That's coming up. But as far as the construction of the infrastructure, this is already as close as probably 2 weeks from getting the construction permit. So part of the financing is there. The people who are going to build the project, it's already hired, and they're just waiting for the green light from the local government. And very likely within the next 2.5 months, we will start with the construction. And then eventually, by the end of the year, probably also around January, February, we will develop the rest on the inside of the project. But it's going to be super exciting. It's going to hire a lot of people. It's also a way where we're going to be teaching different things. There's a small school coming up as well to teach specific things that are going to help the local economy as well. And it's also a way to give back to the community, to keep growing as a whole thing, make it integral. So it's super exciting.
It sounds like education's important for you. Have you continued your education?
Yeah, education is definitely a big piece of advice that I think when you don't know what to do, you just want to keep educating yourself. This is never going to be affecting you in any way. On the other hand, this is going to make you grow. But yeah, I never went to kindergarten, actually. I didn't go to kindergarten because I was in a very rural area, so we didn't have one, as simple as that. But I did go to elementary school, then I finished my high school when I was a little older. I have done things a little later in my life. Finishing high school, I did it with 18 and a half, when kids normally do it by 16 or sometimes 14. Then I went to study natural sciences. I studied this. Then I became a tour guide, got my license. I love languages, so I spent a couple of years studying German, which I speak as well fluently. And then came up with the idea, of going to law school. And I successfully finished this as well. So I am a lawyer. Another thing hard to believe. I actually graduated last year, but the big ceremony and the graduation is happening in 2 days.
That's exciting.
Super exciting, yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Brian, thank you so much for having us here at the farm.
Thank you for having me.
Where can we find you? If people want to come visit you, where are you online, social media? Where can we find you?
All over the place, basically. You can go to Terra Travel, Costa Rica.com. You can go to Chocolatier, ManuelAntonio.com, or social media, the same for the company. And as far as my personal profile, there is Brian with an I, Costa Rica, 3 words. Facebook, Instagram, they're both the same. Brian, Costa Rica. I'm wearing a blue shirt on those.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again for having us. We'll definitely look for you there. And we look forward to connecting the next time, hopefully with this new project. Will be the next site for our future interview.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching this episode of Bizpirations. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you're ready when the next episode comes out in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.